The world doesn't think that the gospel can change your life, but we know that it can. And that's why we want you to hear these stories of transformation, stories of freedom, people getting free from sin and healed from sin because of Jesus. This is Death to Life.
I remember doing that several times, like, oh, I'm getting these feelings again. I don't live by feelings anymore. That was a big thing from Love Reality. You don't live by feelings, you live by the truth. And I was like, man, this sucks. You know, you're having to tell yourself something different than you're feeling, because that's all I had lived by is my feelings for so long. And I hadn't lived by truth, that I was having to retrain my brain in the way that I think to now think, you know, live with the Spirit in me and to live by what the truth says about me instead of my feelings.
Yo, welcome to the Death to Life podcast. My name is Richard Young, and today our episode is with my brother Jonathan Kemper. I've known Jonathan for a long time, and in this episode he's going to open up about that moment that we can all relate to when we let our feelings take over and we find ourselves in a constant shame/feeling cycle. And why this is so important is because until we see the truth, we can't break free from that. We're chained to our feelings, chained to the circumstances. So what he describes, this paradigm shift in his life, is going to be a huge blessing, and I think you're going to really appreciate it. This episode is not for kids. There is adult themes, but there is a profound understanding of God's love by understanding the truth. So let's listen to Jonathan Kemper. Love y'all, appreciate y'all. Buckle up, strap in. Where do you feel like this story starts, man?
Yeah, so I've been praying about it and thinking about it, but probably the best place to start is going to be the end of my 8th grade year. So that would be 2005, I want to say,
2005?
2005, that might be my freshman year. It's been so long. So yeah, early high school. So that's going to be the place where we're going to start.
Before you say anything about early high school, let's set the table a little bit. You're from a Christian background.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Adventist background. Both my parents, both my grandpas were Adventist pastors. So both my mom and dad, they're PK kids, right? So I definitely grew up in the church, the Adventist way, haystacks, Friday night worship, all that good stuff.
And you got two older sisters that I actually went to. I don't know if I went to school with Lisa. I know I went to school with Michelle. But how old is Lisa?
So Michelle's 6 years older than I am. So she's 40, and Lisa's 4 years older than I am. So she's 30.
So yeah, I went to school with both of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's the background. And then we're going to get what happened in 8th grade, man.
Yeah. So 8th grade, I would probably say that's kind of like the start of like all the dying that happens in the story, right? There's a lot of death. But to kind of paint the picture even better. So I grew up most of my life in Central Texas. To paint the picture even better, if you think of Dallas and Austin, right? And I-35, it's right between those two cities. So Central Texas, Killeen, Texas, right by Fort Hood. I went to, from 2nd grade all the way up to 10th grade, Killeen Adventist Junior Academy. So an Adventist Junior Academy, had that whole experience. But yeah, freshman year, okay, I'm playing basketball, small school. There's probably, I don't know, like 12 kids in our class, probably 80 kids max in our school, right? And so at this time, I've never been one to think like I'm the big man on campus, but everybody else was kind of like, oh, Kemper, he's good at ball. He's a nice guy, comes from a good family. And so I had kind of that reputation of, to live up to. My parents, they were involved in church. My grandpas were pastors. I have this reputation to live up to. My sisters are amazing at school. Everybody knows them. So right from the start, right, I'm always thinking, I got to live up to those expectations. Am I going to be good enough? Like if I mess up, are people still going to accept me if I make mistakes? That's kind of the trend of this whole testimony. Well, anyway, I I would say probably the dying starts when I'm dating this girl, right? I have this background. I haven't really dated much, but freshman year, there's this beautiful girl there, really my first serious girlfriend, and she was from public school, and all my friends were like, "Oh man, she's from public school. She's new this year. Oh, she's she's hot," and we start talking and we start dating freshman year. And her parents were also Adventists, but they went to the Spanish church. Uh, well, anyway, so to continue on that freshman year, playing basketball, living up to this reputation, I start to get, while we're dating, we're not living a Christ centered, our relationship isn't Christ centered. And we start to get into things that lead you far from Christ, right? Or
Sure.
distract you from what's most important. And for me, that was like my first experience of like, oh, okay, like this girl's from public school. She knows like all this stuff. Like she's a bad girl per se, she wasn't, but that's kind of what the reputation was. And so I'm starting to get involved with not doing things that don't align with what God wants from us. And go ahead.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
Who was God at this point in your life? Like, who was?
Yeah. So growing up, I always knew God was a loving God and God was a good God. However, I always thought I had to earn his love, right? Because you would memorize the 10 Commandments inside of school and you'd memorize the memory verses and get little stickers and, oh, good job for memorizing the commandments and your memory verses. And so I always thought that God's love was something that I had to earn. And if I acted out or I did something that wasn't aligned with what he says is right, then I'm in trouble or I'm going to be lost forever type of thing. And so that's kind of how I took that.
Did you know that you thought that way, or was it just like a general feeling like that you were kind of low key scared and you were earning it? Did you know that that's kind of what you thought?
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And that's not necessarily reflecting back on it. That's not how my mom and dad were teaching us, but that's what I picked up on. And it's interesting, when you go through your Bible classes at school, if you're in a Christian school, that's the takeaway. And somehow the devil uses this deception for you to think that, oh, you have to earn God's love. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. So anytime you sin or you make a mistake, it's like you're living in that condemnation and shame.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But yeah, living in that relationship, I just started to, the more and more we would do things, the sexual nature, I started to get addicted to that. And for that affirmation of feeling like, well, I messed up. I want to be accepted. I want to be loved. This is my way of feeling accepted and loved. Right. And this was the time where MySpace, right? So do you remember MySpace back in the day?
Oh yeah. I've said this a lot. I announced my, my wedding or my engagement on MySpace. I think it was the last thing on MySpace. Right after that, people saw, they're like, oh, Richard's engaged. We're moving over to Facebook. And so it was over. But before you talk about that, when you would experience these things, was there guilt, condemnation, and shame, but the feeling of doing it was too strong and powerful, or like, what was that like?
Yeah. So I knew what was right and wrong. And because my parents and people around me had instilled in me what was right and what wasn't according to what God wants from us. But as, a teenager, you kind of lose sight of that and you're like, well, this is wrong, but I want to find out for myself. And so, yeah, I thought it was wrong. But then it goes back to, well, I've sinned. I'm already far from God. I
Hmm.
might as well keep going. There's no going back from this. I got to earn God's love. And if he can't love me because I'm making mistakes, then what I'm doing and I'm getting this attention and affirmation from my girlfriend, like that's going to have to do. And so I'm
Hmm.
seeking love and acceptance in that relationship. Right.
Hmm.
And so this carries over. So I kind of like that feeling, that getting that attention. So that carries over into MySpace. And in MySpace, it opened a whole new world because now it's like you're having people send you what friend requests for wanting to be your friend. And so you're seeing all these other girls that are messaging you and they're like, hey, you're cute. I'm trying to holler at you. And that feeling of like, well, God can't love me because I'm making these mistakes, but these women are showing me attention. These girls, like, I'm going to pursue that. And so I started to chase, you know, love in the wrong areas. Right. And so that was a whole thing where I'm dating this girl at the time, but then I have MySpace. And there was one day we were at her house and her mom could throw down with some cooking and she was making us a meal. And um, I remember we were on the computer or something and my girlfriend asked me, hey, let's log into your MySpace. Let's look at it. Let's set your top. At that time, you could set your top like 5, top 10 friends, right? So we're going in
Hmm.
there. I'm like, oh, who should be in my top 5 or whatever? And this message pops up or whatever. She's going through my messages and she sees that I'm talking to these other girls. And that just brought a whole nother level of condemnation and shame right there. Because I got caught in
Did you
essentially,
lie? Did you explain? You're like,
oh,
nah,
yeah.
fam, that's like my
Oh,
aunt.
Oh yeah, for sure. I tried to lie and get around it, but there was no getting around it. Uh, and what's crazy is that when you're living in this deception and this shame, lying, it's too easy to do, and you think it's
Yeah.
going to get you out of the situation, but it never does. And so I got caught there. I'm in an awkward position. I'm at her house. Her parents have welcomed me in. And then she's like, well, okay, well, you need to go home. So I go home. We end up breaking up. Long story short, like, we get back together that summer, right? And then we're dating 10th grade, right? So I'm still living in this cycle of seeking that affirmation of love from girls and wanting that attention from every other place except God. Um, and then, so it goes up to 10th grade. So at that point, I asked my parents to say, hey, mom, dad, can I go to the local public high school? And being old school Adventist and believing in Adventist education, they're like, nah, no, son. There's one
No way.
option for you. There's 2 options for you. You either can go to Jefferson Academy, right, which is in, bless those who have worked there. Nothing against Jefferson Academy. It's East Texas, near Shreveport, Louisiana, by the border in Louisiana, or you can go to Ozark Adventist Academy, where your sisters went. And, seeing my sisters go there, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I can play basketball there. Oh, yeah, it's going to be awesome. So I was like, all right, I'll go to Ozark. So for those that don't know, Ozark Adventist Academy is in Gentry, Arkansas, probably like an hour, I don't know which direction from Fayetteville, Arkansas, to give you,
Northwest Arkansas.
there you go, Northwest Arkansas. There you go. And it's in the middle of nowhere. And when I went there, it was 2007, 2008, right? So, beautiful campus, but the highlight of the city is a Walmart, right? So when I went there, it's like on the weekends, it's like, all right, it's a boarding school. On the weekends, we're going to Walmart. Everybody get on the bus. It's kind of that environment. Um,
It
and
is
so
actually the home of Walmart, right? Northwest Arkansas. The Waltons, aren't they from that area? It's kind of a big deal.
is it? I just learned something. That's kind of
Yeah, how do
cool.
you not know that? Well, yeah,
I don't know. I'm
Arkansas
slacking.
is Walmart's. That's home base.
Yeah, well, the Walmart was really nice, so maybe that explains it. Maybe it was the first super center. I don't know, but
Could be.
it could be. And so transitioning from a day school to a boarding academy, that opened up a whole nother like can of worms, right?
Watch out.
Because if you haven't been to Borden Academy, shout out to everybody that's worked there. I know you have before, Rich.
Yes, sir.
It's a great ministry, but it's not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody. And so I'm there as this young whippersnapper, just wanted to play basketball, have a good time. And lo and behold, right, I have a wake up call because now I'm living in a dorm with a roommate and I'm having to get up by myself, get to class, um, make sure my grades are good. No one's no one's encouraging me to do that, right? It's pretty much I have all this more responsibility while I'm dating this girl, but while there's all these other girls there, right? So it's like, oh man, this is a whole new world. I'm experiencing all these new things, right? So I'm still living in this cycle. I'm dating this girl, right? But while I'm there, these other girls want my attention. So now it's trying to find a balance of, okay, well, I want to have friendships, but I don't have pure motives. So now I'm flirting. I want their attention. I'm trying to get all this attention from all these girls, right? Um, and that's not going well because my girl sees that and she's like, I don't like the way that you're talking to these girls and giving them attention. And I was like, well, I just want to experience this and I want to have friends. And it was not a healthy relationship, as you can probably tell. But it's one of those things where you have history with the person, you don't want to end it because you don't want to see them be with someone else, right? So I'm going through that cycle my junior year, while I'm trying to navigate how to be a young man and take responsibility for my learning while I'm working. So to add to the story, give you more context, at Ozark, they had, I think it was, if you were a junior, you would work in the morning and then you go to school in the morning and you work in the afternoon, right? And it was the opposite for the seniors. So I had a job and I was getting paid, which was nice. It was minimum wage at the time. I don't know what it was. It wasn't much, but it was to help us build responsibility and all that stuff, right? So I'm in the library. I'm working in the library, which is the worst place for me because I'm not the type that can just sit at a desk, be quiet. All right, guys, come in, be quiet. You got to study. Right? I could not do that. And so I would show up to work late every day. And my boss, who at the time was Kase Vunileva. So shout out Kase. I love you. Love you and Paul. This was my first introduction to Kase. She was the chaplain, but she was also my boss. And so I'm living in this world of shame, condemnation, all this stuff, trying to navigate that, right? Which is impacting me in other areas of my life because I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, are people judging me? If God doesn't love me, I got to find attention from other people, right? So, and then I had this fear at the same time of, well, if people really knew what I was struggling with, they would judge me and not want to be friends with me. So I was the master at keeping people at arm's length, right? I would talk to you. I was like, all right. And then I would just, oh, you want to be friends? Oh, no, that's cool. We can be acquaintances. I know you well enough to know who you are. But if you really know me and what I'm going through, oh, you're going to judge me. I'm just going to be this terrible person.
So was it just like, did you think you were a good dude or did you think like, I want to be a good dude, but I can't be, look at the stuff I'm doing?
Yeah, I wanted to be a good guy so bad, Rich. So bad. But I thought I was just the worst person because I'm making all these mistakes. I had cheated on my girlfriend, but yet here I am in high school, still together with her, but still wanting affirmation from other girls. And so I wanted to be a good guy, but that deception, I was just believing I was just this rotten piece of poo, and nobody could love me if they really knew the real me. So all the time I was putting on this front while trying to figure out how to be a young man and take responsibility, right?
Was my brother working there in the library with you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Mike. Yeah, I love that guy. Um, and so yeah, yeah, we had some good times. But yeah, he worked in the library with me. But there was one day I showed up late to work and Casa was she brought me into her office and she's like, you know what, Jonathan, this is just not gonna work. You're here late, you're not really doing your job. We're gonna send you to maintenance, right? Shout out to Mason, who worked at Ozark at the time. He was the head of maintenance. And so I was like, oh, cool. I can use my hands. I'm going to have access to other parts of the school. Like I get to fix things. I get to learn how to repair different stuff. This will be good for me. Well, it was, but also it wasn't. Um, so
Let
fast
me guess,
forward.
you got keys to some different areas.
Yeah, I got keys to get some different areas. And
This is,
yeah,
if you guys don't
it
know
just
what we're
wasn't
talking
good.
about, in a boarding school, he who has the keys rules the world because and you got to keep your, when I'm working there, I had to keep my head on a swivel for those keys because if those keys disappear, there will be babies 9 months from then. You know, it's like you got to
Yeah.
watch out. So you got a hold of some keys apparently.
I got the keys. I got the keys. And yeah, so then that just made things worse. You know, I'm just seeking affirmation, love, wrong places. So that continues throughout my junior year. But fast forward to my senior year, go back to Ozark. My girlfriend and I had broken up. I'm now single, enjoying that time because now I feel like I can just be free. I can just make friends. I don't, I'm not, it sounds bad, but I don't have to be committed in a relationship. And I shouldn't have been in the first place. And now I'm just talking to everybody, but I'm still keeping people at arm's length. I still want to be a good guy, but I think I'm not, right? I think I'm not. And throughout this time, God to me was still a good God, but I would always see people like Kase. She'd be up at front because she was the chaplain at that time. And she would get up in front talking about Jesus. And it was just like waterfall. She would get this emotion in like pure joy and she would start crying. I was like, what is this? Why is she crying? Like, I've never experienced anything like this when talking about Jesus. And the joke was that when she would get up there, it was like those game shows. You needed one of those those little podiums to pop up with a bunch of tissues because we're like, oh, here she goes. She's going to start crying when she talks about Jesus. And so we just thought, like, especially myself, I was like, that's fake. Like, someone with that relationship with Jesus, that can't be real. Like, this
Right.
is all a facade. This is fake. And but I guess that was the first time that really planted that seed in my mind. I'm like, man, I mean, if someone can have that, how do you get that relationship, right? Where it makes you just want to cry or be emotional and so thankful. Like I always know God is a good God, but I feel like I have to earn his love type of thing, right? So I thought that was never possible to have what she had. And I never talked to her about it, but I always thought, man, she's different. You know, you can tell that something was different about her. Um, so senior year, I was in band, I was playing basketball, the whole shebang, people are like, oh, Kemper, he's a good basketball player. I'm finding affirmation from that too. I'm finding love from that, from my performance. Still struggling with being late to class. Um, Still living in that nasty cycle of deception. Um, and so it's coming to the end of senior year, which is 2008, right? I'm 19 at the time and I'm an old senior. And they start asking us, a couple of months before the end of the year, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? And up to that point, I had never really thought about it. I was just kind of like, oh, let's go with the flow. I'm going to play basketball. My dream was to be in the NBA, right? But that got squashed pretty quick. When I couldn't dunk, I was like, nah, there's no future for me here. Um, and so I was like, I probably should have a backup plan. Um, and so we took this test about personality tests, and it tells you, okay, what is your personality? Where would you have the most success? Where would you enjoy working? And for me, it showed like medical field, where you're doing acts of service and you're helping people, or teaching. And so to give you a background, my dad was an OBGYN, and my mom was a nurse, and my oldest sister is she was a nurse. Well, she is a nurse in the ICU, and then my other sister Lisa, she's a teacher. And so I was like, well, medical field or teaching. Oh, those are good options. Do I really want to do both of those? I was like, oh, teachers, they don't get paid that much, but doctors, you make some good pay. So maybe I should do that. And so we take this test. I'm thinking about it. Graduation comes up, right? So now it's summer 2008. And my parents are like, well, where do you want to go to college? So I send my transcripts out, my ACT scores, SAT scores, to all these colleges. And obviously it's going to be an Adventist college. And I'm thinking, I don't know, Southern, they have a reputation of being stuck up and just kind of snooty over there. Yet I had never been there. That's just what I had heard. I was like, I'm not about that. I don't know. I want to go there. And I was like, Andrews, that's too far. That's cold. La Sierra. So then, you know, my sisters, they had been at Union, and my mom and dad both went to Union, and my grandparents on my dad's side went to Union. So I was like, oh man, third generation. Maybe I should go to Union College in Lincoln, Nebraska, right?
Let's go. Let's go.
So I was like, also, my sister Lisa, she'll be there for her last year. That'll be kind of fun to be with her. So let's check this Union thing out. So I get accepted. I'm going to Union College, right? Single, heading in there. It's like, this is going to be awesome, But I got to stop the story right there real quick and go back to when my sisters, when Michelle went to Union College. I was a young buck, and I remember going there and watching her play basketball, right? Because she was on the basketball team. And I remember this is Union College's glory days, right? There was like Matt Dow, Carlos Mott. I think there was this guy named Richard Young. I don't know if he was riding the bench or if he was
warming the bench.
Warming the bench. There you go. But I remember, and I was like, man, that'd be so fun to play basketball at Union. And I remember watching the guys play specifically. I was like, man, this is awesome. I want this. And so I knew of you back then because after basketball games, they would all go out to Valentino's, and the coaches would pay for everybody. And my sister, everyone was sitting down. And I remember you were just like cracking jokes. I was like, who's this guy? She's like, oh, that's Rich. He's funny. He's this cool guy. So that was my first introduction to kind of who you were. Anyway, this will all make sense here in a sec. 2008, I'm going to Union College, and my plan is, I'm going to go into medicine. I want to do something in that field, but I also want to play basketball. I want to be a warrior for Coach Dodds, legend.
Coach Dodds, of course.
Love that guy. And so it was, I think at the beginning of the year, they have these open gym nights where everybody would come out. Everybody in their mother would be there. They're trying to impress, especially all the freshmen, sophomores. They're like,
it's a big deal.
Where are all the girls at? Oh, I got to show out in the gym, make a name for yourself. Well, I remember it was like one of the first pickup nights, and we were playing against each other. And I was like, oh, I know this guy. He's famous for his little crossover and all this stuff. And I remember I was guarding you, and I forget what you said to me, but I was like, man, I'm gonna lock him up. He's not gonna.
I wasn't talking trash to you, was I?
No, you weren't talking trash. But for me, I had seen you play, and so I wanted to prove myself. I was like, man, I want that affirmation, because I'm seeking it from all the wrong places. So I was like, I'm gonna lock him up. I'm going to play this hard defense and all this stuff. So I think I played decent. I don't think you crossed me.
Oh, no, man. I remember this very well. I remember it very well. I think, and sorry if you guys aren't interested in this part, I pride myself back then on being able to shake anybody and everybody. And the first time I tried my crossover on you, you bit, like if someone fully biting is like 100%, you bit 11%. So barely anything. And then you were right back on me, and you were super strong. And I was like, if that's all I have on my first move on him, like, what do I have on this guy? And I was upset because you were so strong and like you were good. And I was like, Oh man, this is not going to be fun if on my first move this is what happens. And for the rest of our time playing against each other, anytime I could shake you, I'd be like, "Oh wow, I could that's a good one cuz Kemp is a great defender." So from the beginning I was like, this guy's an athlete.
I
And
mean,
maybe that sounds
I mean,
full of myself.
going back, I don't know if you ever shook me, Rich. No, I was joking. You definitely did. There were times for sure.
I can
But
remember just like once or twice. That's how good of a defender you were.
no, that was yeah, that was those were good times. But I remember going up against you, and I was like wanting to prove myself, and I was just like, man, this rich guy, everybody looks up to him. I've heard things about him. Like I just wanted to make a good impression, right?
Uh,
Anyway, I say that to say this, right? That no matter what I was doing, whether I was seeking that affirmation from girls or whether it was during basketball or anything, I needed that love and acceptance, right? In some way or the other, right? Um, so we had that interaction that kind of set the tone. I'm going into thinking that well, I did try out for the basketball team and we had practices and I think it was late August, I think when coach puts out the team and I make the team, right? So I'm
big deal. It's a
ecstatic.
big deal. It's a big
It is
deal.
a big deal as a freshman. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of big names there. I think Jeff Ticker or somebody was still there. One of the Ticker brothers, right?
Yeah.
And there was yeah, there's just some good ballers, right? Grown men, essentially. Here I am, a freshman making the team. Like, man, this is an accomplishment. This is making me feel good. I'm feeling accepted. I'm feeling loved. Uh, and so going into the first practice, I remember this vividly. Uh, there was shout out to you, Brock. I love you, man. But there was this guy named Brock and big, strong guy. Um, and someone had shot and they missed. And I was on the opposite side. I got the rebound. I'm going to outlet the pass. And Brock, he was one of those guys that plays really hard. And I always
He's
loved him for
OC.
that.
OC
Yeah,
out of control.
yeah. That's out of control. Yeah, he has a high motor, as they would say
Yeah.
in football. They got a motor. And he kind of lost his balance going for this rebound, and I had got it. And I'm pivoting, I'm going to outlet the ball, and he falls, and all his body weight goes through my leg that is planted on the inside. And he's like 200 something plus pounds. He just takes my knee out. And I kid you not, that is the worst pain that I've ever felt in my life. And at that moment, I said every curse word there was known to man, probably I felt like. And there was people in the stands that were watching. They're like, "Oh shoot, what just happened?" And I look down and I'm like, "Something's not right. I'm in this pain." Practice stops. Coach comes over. He's like, "You all right, Kemp?" I'm like, I don't know. I look down and my leg, if you think of like a grandfather clock, I had no control. It was just like this. Like I could not control my knee whatsoever. No control. And long story short, that freshman year, I had blown out my MCL and PCL grade 3, where I had to have reconstructive surgery. And mind you, I'm wanting to go into the medical field, right? So this is the beginning of school. I'm like, man, I'm going to go out and take these science classes. I'm going to kill it. But this kind of puts a stopgap in that, because now it's, oh, you got to have surgery. You got to go to class. You have to be on these meds that were nice. I'm not going to lie. They took the pain away, but I really couldn't study. I couldn't learn. So I was falling behind. And so then that played into, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm a failure, right?
Mm.
And so now I'm already struggling with, I feel like I'm not a good dude. I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. Now, when it comes to the academic side of things, I feel like I'm doubting myself and I feel like I'm not good enough because I'm falling behind. So now you have this double whammy and there's just really no hope in sight at this point. Um,
So when you got to Union, were you was there like a new lease on life? Like all of the mistakes from high school, you're just like, I'm gonna be a different dude. Did you think like that, or were You already
Right.
like, no, this is kind of who I am. I'm kind of stuck in this rut.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. That was definitely my thinking. I was like, this is a new start. I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to be a good dude. I'm going to earn God's love. I'm going to show him that he can love me. That was my mindset. That was my mindset, going into it. But to start the year off like that was not good. That did not help. Plus, here you are in this ocean of wonderful people, beautiful girls. And I'm like, well, now that I have this going for me, I kind of resorted back to that old pattern of
Mhm.
seeking affirmation in all the wrong places, especially from girls. Um, but at the same time, then, freshman year, we would have, what was it called? ASB events, where it was a
Yeah.
student body association, whatever. And they would put on these events, and I would have people they'd be like, oh, Kemper, let's go to this thing. Let's do this. Let's go hang out. And because I thought I wasn't a good guy, and because I didn't think people could love me if they really knew what I was going through, I would always keep people at arm's length. Right. And so that impacted the relationships in my life of people that wanted to get to know me and have those good friendships. I was pushing away. And that, that with my feeling of, man, I don't know what I want to do in life. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Now that's down the drain. So what am I going to do? Right. So fast forward to, the next year in college. I'm like, well, if I'm not going to do medicine, I might as well get into teaching. Lisa's here, or Lisa was there, and, she had graduated, and now I'm thinking, well, I might as well try the education program. Um, so I'm like, all right, let me give that a try. And it's really cool at Union. Shout out to Union College, because they do a great job of putting you in the classroom that as soon as you declare that's what you want to do, they have a class where they get you into schools just to kind of observe teachers to see if this is what you want to do. And I wasn't fully committed, but I was like, oh, what else am I going to do? So 2009, I start taking classes, taking generals, taking some education class here because I think that's what I want to do. Not sure. Still dealing with the cycle of keeping people at an arm's length, right? Still seeking affirmation from girls. On the basketball team, but I'm not having a lot of success because my rehab isn't going well. And so I feel like I'm a failure there. And so there's all these things going on. And it's just this cocktail of, I'm never going to get out of this. This is the cycle. Uh, I'm going to be a failure. Like, I couldn't do medicine. So now I got to turn to education, right? And nothing against educators, but I don't think that's as difficult to become a teacher as it is to be a doctor, right?
It just isn't. Yeah,
It just isn't.
And so you don't make as much money either.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm struggling with kind of that identity of, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to do in life? And that kind of is the cycle up until going through classes, taking generals, still living that same cycle until about 2000. I would say it's probably 2011, I want to say. And so I'm in this education thing. I've decided this is what I want to do, because I feel like there's no other option. And so I kind of feel like a failure. Well, I'm not living up to my potential because I could do more of do a job that's going to be seen as important, right? I'm going to get that acceptance. I'm going to get that affirmation. I'm going to make that money.
I think at this point, you had already developed your reputation at the school.
Oh, for sure. I can elaborate on that too, but go ahead.
Yeah. And there's a few vivid memories I remember of you, and this is probably the one in the middle. And I was coaching on the team. I was the assistant coach. And this is the year, might have been Tyler's. Oh, this might have been when you were a little older. Okay, so this was like Tyler's junior year or something, and I was the assistant coach, and we needed people to play on the team, and we were looking rough. And I'm like, man, Kemper can play, dude. And I was like begging you to play on the team. But I think you had been so low and um you had kind of alienated yourself
Yep.
because of your reputation, which
Mhm.
and the reputation was pretty simple. You were a ladies guy. And I remember we were outside of the Thunderdome and you were really you I think because I had wanted you to play and Dodds had wanted you to play and Tyler had wanted you to play and all these guys on the team wanted you to play. I think you were like, yeah, I want to, these guys are looking at me. They see something in me. And so you had tried, but then all this other stuff in your life was coming at you so fast. And you tell me if I'm wrong. I remember talking to you about it and you're just like, I just can't do it. And it felt like you were letting me down. I felt like that's how you felt, like kind of your head was hanging. And I was like, no, man, I was kind of just thinking about myself and the team, like, oh, I got to get this guy. And when you couldn't do it, I was like, man, what is going on with this guy? And I felt really bad, but I'm like, this dude is fighting a bunch of stuff that I don't really know about. I feel like this is kind of the time am I wrong about this? I don't know if you remember this time in your
Yeah.
life.
No, I do remember that, Rich. Well, yeah, I was going through a lot and I felt like I was letting you guys down. Um, because to have you and Dodds and Tyler and people, wanting me to be a part of this, that made me feel good in a way. But at the same time, I was like, man, I'm just this bad guy. I wanna do what's right, but here I am again, keeping everybody at arm's length, right? Because I'm like, if they know who I really am, they're gonna judge me and they're gonna see that I'm a fraud. I'm this other guy, I come across as nice and personable, but I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
When like the word of like, how girls talk and it gets around like, oh, Kemper's about this, and
Mhm.
you hear back like, this is what people think about me. What did that do to you? How did that hit you?
Oh man. Like that, yeah, that hurts. That hurts because it's like, man, I really am this bad guy. But throughout all of that, like I didn't want that reputation.
Right.
I didn't want that reputation, but that was how I medicated, through that cycle of like, I'm this bad dude. So I need to go medicate. I need to go talk to this girl and seek affirmation in that way. And
Mhm.
to give you more light about how bad that was, I want to say this was 2011, and I'm not living in Cooper's apartments yet. I'm still in the dorm, right? And during this time, there's these guys that are, or there was one of the teammates, I think that was on the team, and he had keys to the gym. And I remember this vividly. I During that time, coach was like, well, if you want to get up extra shots, you can go to the gym at any time and get some shots up, better your game. And so that one of the captains on the team had the keys to the gym. And I was like, hey, can I borrow the keys? I'm going to get some shots up tonight. But that wasn't my plan. My plan was to take a girl there and
Yeah.
be in the gym because I didn't have a place to go,
Yeah.
So I was like,
You still
I'm
live
going
in
to
the
go to,
dorm.
yeah, I'm still in the dorm. So I have these keys. It's probably, I don't know, 9 o'clock. And I go to the gym, there's security driving around, their little security cart, making sure everything is good, their little flashlight. Um, and I get in the gym and I'm like, hey, meet me at the side door. And so she comes, let her in the side door. And we're in the gym for, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes. And then I hear the keys jingling. I'm like, oh, shoot, who's coming in? Uh-oh, this isn't good. And so the door opens and it's like, someone's like, is anyone in there? Anyone in there? We know you're in there. Who's in there? And I'll stay silent. You're staying silent. And eventually they're like, we know you're in there. And it's the cops. It's the police. And
What?
they're like, we have dogs. We know you're in there. We're going to unleash the dogs if you don't, say that you're in there. I was like, yeah, we're in here. And so they come in, the lights, all the gym lights are off. They're coming in with the dogs. The dogs are barking. Poof, 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 poof. Flashlights are going. And I'm just up there on the stage, and this poor girl is up here, is in there with me, right? And they come up, they shine the flashlight on me, and they come up, they put me down, face down on the gym, on the gym stage. And they're like putting my hands behind my back like this. I'm laying on the stage. And then coach comes up there, Ron Dodds, and they shine a flashlight on me, and coach is like, Kemper? I still remember it to this day. The disappointment in his voice of like, no way, Kemper? Is that you? And I was just like, yeah, coach, it's me. He's like, what are you doing in here? I was like, oh, I got the keys and I brought a girl in here. I shouldn't have done that. And so the cops at that time were like, are you good? Do you want us to take him? And Dodds was like, no, I got it. I got it. So the cops leave, right? So to give you some context behind that, there had been some vandalizing going on in the community at that time. People were breaking into other places and stealing stuff. And so one of the security guards, they saw us go into the side door. And so they thought someone was breaking into the gym. So they called Dodds, and Dodds calls the cops. And the cops come thinking they're going to catch this guy that has been stealing. Well, it's me, right? And so I remember walking out of the gym with Dodds. My head is just low like this. I feel bad. I've embarrassed this girl. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? They're going to kick me out of school. And I remember I'm walking with Dodds, and there's this desk at Prescott. So when you come in the dorm, you have to check in. Well, the captain was working the desk, and he looks at me, and I look at him, and I'm just like, you can see the disappointment in his face. Like, what in the world's going on? I'll let someone else down. And at this time, I'm thinking, well, they're going to kick me out of Union College. I'm going to embarrass my family. Like this is so embarrassing. I already have this reputation of just using girls, being a womanizer. This just makes it so much worse. And so long story short, I don't think, and thank goodness no one knew like the identity of the girl. Like Union did a great job of protecting her, but people knew it was me, and I was fine. Just let them know it was me, coach. Like I'm fine with that. And so I was like, what's going to happen? And coach was like, don't worry, like it's going to be okay. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just want to let you know that I love you. And I was like, what? You love me? What are you talking about, coach? How could you love a guy that's doing these things? And so they had their meeting. Long story short, a lot of people weren't happy, but coach was one of the people that stood up for me in that meeting. And he's like, Kemp's a good guy. He's a good dude. I'll take care of it. And so I had to be on in school suspension. I think it was for 2 or 3 days where I had to stay in his office and do all my work. And then I had to call home and let my parents know what happened. Well, this is where it's even worse. It's because, I forget who was it, someone, dean of academics or someone was like, hey, have you called your parents about this? And then I'm like, well, this is embarrassing. I can't let my parents know. So I got to lie. I got to lie about this and say, it's just not a good time. My grandpa passed away and my parents are still grieving. Yeah. Right. I started lying to try to cover this up and to not have more embarrassment with my family. So I can't call them right now. I'll call them later. And luckily, thank God, I never had to call. I never had to call them. But that just shows like the spot that I was in. I was willing to lie to make myself, to spare myself from more embarrassment and shame. So that's just a crazy story. And but I remember thinking through that whole thing, coach was like, I love you. It's going to be okay. And from that point on, 2011, Cause I was at Union for a while, Rich, I'm not gonna lie. I changed my major, a few times, changed my major a few times. That cycle continued throughout graduation, which was 2015. I failed some classes. I had to take a year off because if you fail a core class, they don't offer it in the fall. So then you have to come back in the spring and take it. And so that extended my years to 7 years. At Union College, which was, I had my doctorate. I'm good. Uh, but through that whole ordeal, there's, there's more to it. Um, I'm struggling with all that stuff. Dodds is, believing in me. He was always there for me. Uh, but I remember vividly before we transition into the next phase of the story real quickly is that before my senior year, one of my senior years, cause I had two, cause I was a super senior, uh, I started to develop anxiety when it came to school because I'm living in this cycle. I'm feeling like I'm not going to be good enough. Is teaching good enough? Am I going to be able to support my family? I kind of settled for teaching. I don't really feel like God is leading me to it. I just kind of picked it. So now here I am, my senior year, doing my practicum and core classes, and I'm getting this anxiety and this fear of like I'm not good enough. I'm gonna be a failure. I'm this bad dude. And so I started not showing up to my observations, right? Where you have to go and you observe another teacher. And I started lying about it on my logs that I had to turn in to my professor to show that we're getting so many hours for observations. Well, the teacher knows the
It's not
teacher
too
at the
hard to
public
figure that
school.
out.
Yeah. They email my professor at the time, which was Tim Simon, and then later Sharon Russell. Uh, hey, this guy's not showing up. But yet I'm lying on my logs and I'm filling out my forms saying that I am. So this is another problem. So now it's being taken to the academic dean, and they're like, well, you're lying, you failed. Do we still want to have you in this program? And I'm like, oh man, like I almost was kicked out of union once. I can't be kicked out now. And so at that point in time, I was dealing with all this anxiety, it was too much. And so they started having me talk to Stan Hart, great guy at the school, counseled a lot
Love
of
him.
young men. And so I was talking to him about some of the things I was going through, and that helped for a while. And I remember talking to Linda Becker. I'm like, oh, please, just have faith in me. I promise, like, I'll go see Stan and I'll have some counseling and he'll help me get through this. Just don't quit on me. And I remember Sharon Russell. Oh man, bless her soul. She took me into her office and it was a lot like Dodd's. She sat me down and she was just real with me. She's like, Jonathan, what is going on here? And I remember not giving her details, but just kind of telling her enough so that she knew, but without really getting too personal, and just crying my eyes out, man. Because I was a guy that wanted help, but I could never really tell Stan or anybody what I was really going through because I felt like they wouldn't love me and accept me for who I was. So long story short, Linda Becker, Sharon Russell, academic dean, they're like, okay, we're gonna let you finish this program, but under these conditions. So I had more conditions that I had to check in and I had to make sure I was submitting my stuff. Long story short, I finished it, right? 2015, I finished my school, right? I'm done. Man, I've graduated. At this point, my parents are like probably thinking, hallelujah, he finished, right? And my parents, they don't know any of the stuff that I'm going through. They just think that I'm someone that doesn't know what he wants to do in life, right?
Mm.
And so they're, of course, my parents are loving and they're supportive. But at this point, my dad's like, okay, son, you need to figure this out. Right. And they've been paying for my college, but the last, couple of years, they're like, we're not going to pay for it. You got to pay for it. So now I have even more pressure being like, okay, I had to pay for this. Bills are piling up. What am I going to do? So I finished, and now it's, what am I going to do? Where am I going to work? What job am I going to get? Who's going to give me a good recommendation? I'm this guy that's been a failure, hasn't lived up to my potential. I don't believe in myself. I'm already feeling like Oh, I settled for teaching when I could do something so much, what I feel is so much more important of worldly value, because I want to be seen as this guy that is doing good things and all these big things, right? I want to be seen as smart, accepted, loved, all that, right? So it's summer 2016. I'm back in Killeen, Texas, and I'm like, well, where am I going to work? So I'm praying about it. And I'm like, okay, I know I should pray about it. I see my mom and dad do it. At Union College, you're like, pray about it. Trust God. He'll provide. I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. So I pray about it. It's probably end of June, and it's getting towards the middle of June. I still don't have a job offer. I'm like, well, if I want to work in the Adventist system, this isn't looking good. And I don't want to work in public school. So that next week, I want to say it was the week, it was like the 24th of June or something. I get 2 phone calls. One phone call was from an Adventist school up north where it's really cold. And another was from a school in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. And I'm already thinking off the top, I don't want to go to that school up north because it's small, right? I'm going to be isolated. It's cold, bad winters. But what's the school about out in Oregon, So I interview some more with the school up north. I interview with the school in Oregon. The school in Oregon flies me out there, right? And while I'm out there, I'm looking at the school. The position was going to be, I'm going to be an athletic director, which in the Adventist system, if you're a PE teacher, that's golden. If you're an athletic director and teaching PE, woo, you hit the jackpot, right? And so I'm looking at the school is about 360 kids, K to 8th grade, right? I'm like, man, this is the dream. Wow. And while I'm out there, I get a job offer from the school up north, right? So I tell them, I was like, thank you so much. Actually, I'm out here interviewing at another school too. I want to keep my options open. I was very honest. And so I go to sleep that night. I had seen the school in Oregon. They put me up in a hotel. Go to sleep the next morning, right? I'm at the airport and they call me and they're like, hey, we want to extend this offer to come out here and be our athletic director and teach kindergarten through 8th grade. How does that sound? I was like, oh, I would love that. Trying to play it cool. I'm going to pray about it. Can I get back to you tomorrow? But knowing getting well, I'm going to take that job. And so I have to call the school up north, let them know, because I have the job offer. I said, hey, I have this other offer. I think I'm going to take it. Thank you so much for giving me a chance and being willing to interview me. But I feel like this is where God is taking me. So I move out to summer 2016. I move out to Portland, Oregon, right? And so this kind of starts the next chapter of the story, right? So at this time, I still feel like I have to earn God's love. I'm still feeling as though I'm this bad dude, but here's a chance to have another start. Okay. I can start over again. People don't know me. No one knows me. No one knows my reputation out here from college. Like that feeling was refreshing because I was like, this is my first time, like really branching off on my own. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make a good name for myself. And so I start teaching and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm organizing the athletics. I'm teaching. They set me up with a mentor there that had been teaching at another Adventist school for several years. And this guy, you could tell, like he was locked in. He had a relationship with Jesus, just how he walked and how he talked and how he treated everybody. I was like, this guy is different. Like this is the mentor that I need, right? But it was still lonely. I didn't know anybody. I still kind of kept people at a distance. I remember some of the teachers, one teacher, she would take me out to dinner with her family and I would get to know them. And then some of my students' parents would ask me, what are you doing on Sabbath? Come go hiking with us. And I would always make up an excuse, Rich. I'll make up an excuse, be like, oh, I already have plans. Wow. No, I already have, I'm going to go to this church. Thank you though. I really appreciate it. And so people wanted to get to know me, but I was still like, nah, you can't love me. You can't love me. I'm this bad guy. Um, and so that cycle continued. And plus, in Portland, Oregon, there's not a lot of sunshine. There's not a lot of sunshine. Shout out to everyone in Portland. Hey, great place when it's sunny.
Yeah.
But I couldn't handle the rain. I grew up in Texas, so I like the sunshine. And so there's that combination of I'm already down, kind of in the dumps. I'm trying to make it, trying to navigate it. And then it's gloomy. So I'm feeling depressed, like kind of sad. I'm this sad puppy, like, oh, I'm so lonely, right? So then more of the same continues.
Mhm.
Like some girls, they come visit me that I had previously known from growing up in one in Texas, and then another I knew from back in the day. They come visit me, same old story, trying to find love in all the wrong places. But while I'm there, people don't stop trying to get to know me. I remember going to church and sitting in the pew and going to Sabbath school. And then people after like, hey, we're having this young adult potluck. We'd really like you to come. I'd make up an excuse. Oh, sorry, I can't. I already have plans. And so then I would just make me more like down in the dumps of like, oh man, I can never get out of this cycle that I'm in. I don't want anybody to really know who I am and all the things that I'm doing. I can't ask anybody for help. I can't reach out to anybody because they're just going to judge me. How can you love me?
Mm.
Right. And so that cycle just continues and continues. And it's really sad. It is really sad because so many good people, and I don't live in regret now, but looking back on it, there's so many good people that I could have formed relationships with,
Mhm.
but I didn't because I was living in this deception, in the cycle.
Mhm.
Yeah. You want me to keep going?
No, man, as you're talking, I feel like, you know, so much more is coming into my mind about what's about to happen. And it's kind of just blowing my mind
Yeah.
that I've seen all of this. So, no, I've just been thinking, if you've seen me looking at my phone, I was actually looking at our old text messages because I'm like, what is the date on this? What is the date on this?
Yeah.
No, man. So, yeah, keep going. You're up in that foolishness
Foolishness.
and trying to find
Yeah.
love in all the wrong places.
Yeah. So it was towards the end so I started working at this school in summer 2016. Well, now it's spring 2017, right? And I'm loving my job, Rich. Everybody when I was working at that school, the principal would be like, hey, do you want to be an administrator someday? Because I think you'd be great at it. I think you'd be a great principal. Like it got to the point where the conference was investing in me for leadership. And so they were having me go to the conference office with Ben Lundquist. If you don't know who that is, great guy.
Oh, he's the man. The man. Yeah.
And I was sitting in meetings with him and other leadership. And I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I don't know anything about leadership. I don't know how to be a leader. Like, why am I here? Like, I'm the worst person in this room. I'm the biggest sinner. Like, I'm living a double life. But they were taking that time to invest in me because they believed in me, but I didn't believe in myself. Anyway, so I was thinking I was going to stay there. Like that was going to be the school was going to be out for the next 10, 15 plus years probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, God has a funny way of going about his will for your life, right? And so I get a call, throw back to when I was at Ozark, 2007, 2008. Kase Unileva was the chaplain at Ozark. She's also my boss. She's the one that fired me in high school. Mm-hmm. I get a call. I'm sitting in my office. I think I'm working on athletic schedules. And I'm like, who's turning in their basketball uniforms, trying to collect all that stuff. And I get a call. I'm like, Colorado area code. Like, who's this? And so I answer it. And it's like, hey, Jonathan, this is Kase Unileva. I'm like, Kase, hey. And she's like, hey, I'm just reaching out because we were thinking and we've had a vacancy open up for next year. And we were wondering if you'd love to come teach PE at Mile High Academy. And to give you some context, my sister lives in Denver, and she worked at Mile High Academy at the time teaching high school science. So here I am. I have a really good relationship with my sisters. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. Like, can I think about this? I really love the school that I'm at. But I would love to be there too. Let me pray about it. So here I am. People love me at this school. I'm not thinking that I'm being there for 1 year. Who leaves? That's especially an athletic director position at a really nice school. And so I feel like, well, my sister's there, family's there, beautiful Colorado mountains, and like Mile High's the dream. Like, yes. So I call her back later that week. I let her know, yeah, like I would love to be there. Let the school administration know where I'm working. They're sad to see me go because they saw a lot of potential. They were already trying to invest in me to be a leader and all that good stuff. So I moved to Denver, Colorado. But during that summer, I had a not relationship, but I got into a situation that I shouldn't have been in when I was talking to one of my students' moms who was married at the time from that school that I had previously taught at. So, and there was nothing physical. It was just some inappropriate texts and things of that nature. And so that happened that summer while I was moving. Well, that ended.
So it was right before you're moving to Colorado.
Right before I moved to Colorado, that happens. Right?
Okay.
With this woman that's married, and I had taught her kids. So terrible. But that's the place I was in. I was like, well, I need that affirmation. I need that attention. I need that love. Here's another place that I can get it. And I wasn't really thinking about the consequences at that time. I had that reputation from college. I'd started new, but here I am, falling back, still doing those same things. But now I crossed a line that I never thought I would cross. And so now I'm feeling really bad, but also like, well, it's ended, so everything's okay, right? And so
when this was someone who's married and you go across a line that you never thought you would, what did that say about you? Like, what did you go further? Like, or was it like, I got to put the brakes on this? Like, I never thought this would be a possibility.
No, I was the one that was continuing to push for the conversations and things of that nature. And because I was like, man, this is like a married woman. Wow. Like she would want to be invested in me. Wow. Like that says something. Like, man, maybe I am lovable, like there's someone that's in this relationship, which was a toxic mentality and thought process to have. But that was my thinking. So I was kind of, instigating and kind of leading the conversations, and inappropriate things were said, and just a bunch of stuff that shouldn't happen. Right.
Right.
So fast forward after that, I'm in the process of moving to Denver. So I get to Denver, and at the time, summer 2017, Cassie's like, hey, there's this guy, that's the recruiter for our school named Derek Baker. And I had gone to school with Derek Baker, at Ozark and at Union College. I had played intramurals with him. I was his classmate.
Love Derek Baker. He's the man.
Yeah, good guy. I wasn't really close with him, but we were cordial. We played sports together. We had a good relationship, but we weren't close friends, right? And he was the recruiter at that time. And Cassie, at that moment, was trying to expand Mile High. And so she was trying to bring in a lot of foreign exchange students, right, from China. And so Derek's job at that time was to show these foreign exchange students the Denver area, right? Oh, you want to come to school here because these are all the things you could do. And so Cassie asked me to help Derek, right? And so I was like, oh, I can do that. So we take them to several hikes like Devil's Head. We take them to a Rockies game. and we took him to Pearl Street, right? And now this is where I eventually see my wife for the first time. Okay. So this is summer 2017. I'm still dealing with everything that I'm dealing with, still living that double life. But I'm like, man, God is good. I'm here in Denver, Colorado. I'm blessed with this great job. I don't know how I have it, but I do. Right. And so then I'll fast forward to when I first saw my Hope, eventual wife. So we're on Pearl Street showing the foreign exchange students, in Boulder, Colorado, showing them, around and taking them, getting some food and stuff. Well, during that time, I'm 6 years older than my wife. So during that time, she is working at Glacier View Ranch. And for those that don't know, it's a summer camp up in the Rocky Mountains. And so a lot of college students work there from Union College in the summer, right? And she was dating someone at the time. And I remember being with Derek on Pearl Street, and I knew who she was dating, but I wasn't really close friends with him. But I knew him because he was in some of my education classes because I was at Union for so long. So we're talking, I'm talking to him, and then I see this girl, and I'm like, who is this girl? Man, she's beautiful, but at the same time, I was thinking she looked kind of like she was stuck up. So I was judging her hardcore. I was like, man, she looks like she's stuck up like a mean girl. She's one of those mean girls, like, oh, I'm
One of
just
the
popular.
plastics.
Yeah, it was popular, but I was like, man, she's gorgeous. And so in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that's awesome. You're dating this girl. I didn't say that to him. I was like, she's beautiful. She's working at camp, so she loves kids. So I thought that was cool. So that was my first interaction with her. I never was introduced to her, so I didn't even talk to her, which was really weird because we saw each other. No one introduced us. Her family was there, her mom and her siblings, because it was her day off. Anyway, right? I don't think anything of it. So summer ends, school starts, I'm teaching and still kind of struggling with same cycle of stuff, seeking affirmation in the wrong places, But then I think it was September 23rd, I get a friend request. And now, several years later, so now I'm on Facebook. It's still the cool thing for young people. And
it was cool, trust me.
It was cool, trust me. Yeah. And I get this friend request. I'm like, Hope Sajak. What? This looks like the girl that I saw on Pearl Street, right? But then she dating this dude. And so it was her birthday on the 21st, and I get that request on the 23rd of September. So I see it. It's like Sabbath. I think it's a Sabbath. It's Saturday. Okay, Saturday. And so I message her since I'm at Seventh Adventist. I'm like, hey, see that it was your birthday. Happy birthday and happy late birthday and also happy Sabbath. Right? I said that was pretty much it. And so that kind of started that dialogue between us, right? So now I'm teaching at this awesome school. I'm teaching with my sister. I'm the assistant athletic director. I'm teaching physical education, preschool through 12th grade, the whole shebang. And so I'm loving it. Living in Denver, Colorado. The school is right there. The Rockies are in the background. Like this is paradise, right? This is God's country. Like life is amazing, but I'm still struggling with trying to hide that other life, right? I don't want anybody to find out about that. So still living that double life, but I'm also talking to her, right? But with her, I'm trying to do things differently because I had never really been one to really get into the dating relationships. That just wasn't my thing because I was like, no, I'm not. I'm a bad dude. So no one's going to want to date me, right? So I'm just going to stick to like these little flings and things that don't mean anything, right? So we start talking and she's in a nursing program. I'm working at Mile High. And I think Mile High, we sent our volleyball team to Union College to play in a tournament where they play other schools or whatnot. And so I was like, oh, what a great opportunity to go like meet her for the first time and hang out. Right. So I go down there. I meet her for the first time. I think we, uh, and it was kind of awkward because she was sitting with her friends, and I started to get flashbacks of like my reputation at Union. And so like she came in the gym with her friends, and she was sitting there, and I pretended like I didn't see her, Rich, because I'm thinking like, nah, man, people know my reputation. I'm not a good dude. Like I was really psyching myself out, right? But she didn't know this about me. She didn't know my reputation at that point, or she didn't know all of it. But here I am. I'm having these flashbacks to when I'm in college, and I'm keeping people at arm's distance. I'm keeping people away because I think they're judging me. And so I see her, I ignore her. She ends up leaving, and then I text her. I'm like, "Hey, where you at?" Like I didn't see her. And so her and her good friend are like, "That is weird, so weird." And then Hope's like, "What should I do?" And her friend's like, "Oh, you should go back in there." So she goes back in there, and then I'm like, "Hey, good to see you." Give her a hug. We start talking, and then we end up hanging out that weekend. And that weekend, Morgan and Tyler, they had a little apartment, and they weren't there that weekend. And so we had a cool place to crash, not crash, but just hang out that night,
Yeah.
watch a movie or whatever. And so we're hanging out, just getting to know each other. And I was like, man, this girl, like, this is a good vibe. Like, it's just different. Like, I don't want to mess this up. Like, I really like her. She seems like quality. She's
Uh-huh.
single. She's just, man, I'm a lucky dude, right? If she only knew my past, man. And, and so at that point, usually when you try to do something different, it's just, it just, the pendulum swings too far, right? Where you're like, here you're doing things one way. Oh, it goes to the opposite extreme. And so now, after that visit, where our relationship is progressing. And I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't know if I even want to hold hands or kiss because I'm trying to do things differently. I want things to be right. Like
Right.
I want this to be right. I want this to work so bad. Right. So now it's probably like end of November. Right. And we're talking. I had asked her out. And so now we're dating. It's official. She's in Union College. She's at Union College in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm in Denver. Right. So there's that distance. But during this time, right, I'm in this relationship. I'm still seeking that affirmation from other girls. And I'm still doing my
You,
thing, living that double life.
when did we talk at, was this at the basketball tournament that you, and this is another vivid memory that I had.
Yes, it's coming up. It's coming up. I'm getting to that.
Okay. Because Hope was my student worker, I think, for half a year or something.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
And so I had been the camp pastor at Glacier View, and I got to know Hope. And just like, she was this special person. We're all like, Hope's this great person. And then we're like, she's dating Kemp? Like, whoa, what's that all about? That was the mindset. And
Yeah,
I
rightfully
always was
so.
I was always rooting for you, but we weren't tight or anything like that. But I
No.
was always like rooting for you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that was my mindset when I heard about you guys dating.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Like I would agree, like I shouldn't have been anywhere near a dating relationship at that point, just because I had enough stuff going on. And so it's, I was seeking affirmation in the wrong places, but yet we're dating. And so here's the cycle again where I'm in this relationship, we're putting God first. I'm trying to do everything right to let her know that, and myself know that I can do a relationship the right way, and I can be a good person so God can love me. Right. And to show her that I do really care about her. Because I had never done that with a girl before. I had never like shown her and done things the right way. And so she found out, she eventually, of course, your sins come to light. And she
Mm.
found out that I was not being faithful. And that was not good. That was not good, Rich, because
Bad.
it wasn't good. Um, because it caused a lot of pain, so
Yeah.
much pain to her. Here she is thinking, man, this guy's everything that, these are her words. These are her words, podcast. Okay. Everything that I've wanted, right? He's a good guy, a good, solid teaching career. Um, he's Seems like he's religious, like he puts God first. But that was just the facade. Like I wanted those to do things the right way, and I would put on this act, but then I would go back into that old mindset. So then that caused a lot of trust issues. And as we know, when you have, that was the start of it. When you have trust issues, it's really, really hard to come back from that. It's really hard to come back from that. But being the loving person that she was, okay, she forgave me. We talked about it. I tried to, I was like, how should I do that? I explained to her, I was like, look, with you, it's different. With you, it's different. I'm trying to do things the right way. And for her, and any person in the right mind is like, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you were, you wouldn't be living the same lifestyle. You would be one way all the time, right? But in my head, I was like, well, with you, I'm this way, and I really mean it. I really mean it. Just believe it. But that's, who's going to believe that when here I am living this double life, right?
Did you believe it?
No, I really liked her. Like, I believed that, like with her, everything was genuine. It was genuine. And I was doing everything because I really cared about her. I wanted to make sure that she was valued, and just really treated her with a lot of respect. But that lifestyle, it becomes really tiring to try to be two people and live two different lives.
So that's what I mean. Did you believe that you were changing? Or were you
I,
like, man, I really like this girl so much that I want to change so badly. I want to be that guy. And
yeah,
because I like her so much, I'm going to be the guy.
yeah, that was my motivation, because I really liked her, and she deserved that. She deserved the best. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of my mindset. Like, I'm gonna do this because I like, she needs that. And I want to show her that this is who I am.
Mhm.
So, she forgives me. And then that Christmas comes around, and I'm like, hey, why don't you come meet the fam? Which is kind of soon, right? It's kind of soon after all that happens. She comes to Colleen, Texas to meet the fam, the two sisters, dad and mom. And my mom loves her, like she's great, like, Hope's personable. She can get along with anybody. Great conversation with my mom. Like, she's helping, things that you do when you're with the in-laws for the first, you're making a good impression, right? With everybody. My sisters like her. My sisters are like, man, me and my parents are like, this is the first girl that he's brought home. He really likes you. This is a big thing for Jonathan. Now, fast forward to February 2018. Okay. It's a basketball tournament. Okay. So just like volleyball tournament now, like I'm coaching varsity girls basketball at Mile High. We bring our team over to Lincoln, Nebraska to play the other Adventist high schools. And it's Valentine's weekend, but I'm also responsible, since our athletic director didn't come, I'm responsible for everyone since I'm the assistant athletic director. So I'm trying to coordinate schedules with parents, with teams, let them know where they should be, where they should play, while also I'm coaching and trying to spend time with Hope. Okay.
It's a
Um,
lot.
it's a lot, man. It's a lot. And she was great. She was my number one fan. I think she made a shirt like saying, go Coach Kemper, number one, something like that. So I was like, man, this is awesome to have a woman that's so supportive like this. I've never had that. And so anyway, it was Valentine's
Was
weekend. She
she
gets,
like your first legit girlfriend in like since high school?
yeah, because I had always just kind of had non-serious relationships, Rich. Yeah. So she was kind of like the first one that I was like, all right, I'm going to be serious.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So there was a lot of learning on the fly. A lot of learning. So it's Valentine's weekend. I have all these things on my plate, and I'm like, shoot, what am I gonna do? I don't have a gift. And so she buys me these chocos, and I hadn't gotten her anything, Rich. Not a card, no flowers, no candy, no gift. And we had to go to the grocery store to pick up something for, I don't know, one of the team members needed something. So I'm at King Super, and I'm at the checkout line. I'm like, I got nothing. And then I see these dudes last minute buying flowers. And I'm like, well, I don't got anything for her, but if I buy flowers at the last minute, that's going to look even worse. That was my thinking. Because it's short. I didn't think about this. And so I'm like, nah, I don't need flowers. I'm not going to get anything. So I go back to the car later that night and I have nothing for her. We're hanging out and she's really hurt about this. She's like, I got nothing. This is Valentine's Day and you didn't get anything, like nothing, a card, flowers, nothing. And I was like, I'm sorry, babe. I didn't get nothing. I thought it would be worse if I got something last minute. And she was just like, oh my goodness, this guy right here. So she calls later. She calls her mom, and she starts telling her mom, he didn't give me anything for Valentine's Day. So now I'm looking like a fool. But with her mom and the fam bam. I'm like, oh Lord, let me dig my grave right now. This is embarrassing. But here she did. She spent like $80 on these nice sandals. Um, I'm like, oh man, I'm such a bad dude, such a bad boyfriend. Oh my goodness. Right. So that didn't go down well. But luckily the weekend ended on a high note. So now it's probably, I want to say end of March, right? End of March.
Uh-huh.
And Costy's our principal, right? So now we're getting into some big death here. Costy sends me an email and I think the email read something like this. Hey, Jonathan, I'm just reaching out because I want to schedule a time to meet with you just to talk about a few things. And if you're a teacher or any profession and you get an email from your boss like that, you're like, one of two things. Either this could be good, very rarely is, or this is bad, right? So I'm like, I go the second route and I'm thinking, well, what could this be about? And guess what I'm thinking about? Oregon. I was like, oh, it's got to be something with Portland, Oregon. Oh boy. So I think we met.
You really thought that? You really thought like it was coming back to bite you?
I really did, man. I really did. The Adventist world is small. Adventist world is small, and your sins always come to light, man. Always come to light. They always do. And so I was thinking, I was like, oh man, like shoot, that fear of being found out was this living a double life. It was becoming real. I was like, oh man, I'm going to be found out. This is going to be so embarrassing. Oh my goodness, hope is going to leave me. Like I'm going to lose. I don't know what's going to happen with my job. Right. So fast forward a couple of days later, we're meeting in the athletic director's office. You know, he's not there, but we're meeting there. And she asks me these questions. She starts off with, so we received some concerns from the Oregon conference. And right then and there, dude, oh my goodness, if you've ever been caught in a lie, imagine that feeling of like that comes over you like, oh crap, I've been found out, and times that by 1,000. I was just like, oh no, here it comes. Here it comes. And so she started asking me all these questions. She's like, do you know this person? I said, yes. Here are the concerns that we've received. We're going to follow up on them, but we want to hear your side of the story. So I give my side of the story. I'm honest. I'm, forthright. I tell exactly what happened. Nothing physical, but that inappropriate messages were sent. And that the lady was married. And she's like, thank you. And at this time, like I'm crying too, because I'm being found out as a fraud. I'm a fake. And so here comes some more condemnation and shame, embarrassment. Like here's this woman that fired me in high school, believed in me enough to be like, hey, we want to hire you at this school. To now I'm letting her down again. Man, like that's a lot. That is a lot. So she basically tells me, hey, we're the conference and I and the superintendents are going to talk about this, look into some things. We'll get back to you. We'll schedule another meeting probably next week. So, the weekend happens another 2 days. So it's like Wednesday next week. We meet, but this time it's with the superintendent and, was it the assistant superintendent? I don't know how those.
Probably like an HR person too, right?
Yeah, an HR. Yeah. So it was,
That's how you know it's about to go down.
and we were in the conference room. I was like, oh shoot, this is obviously it's serious, but I was like, oh boy, like here it comes. Like, Costa already knows I'm a fraud. Everybody in the world's gonna know, like, that I'm a fraud. I'm living this double life. My sins are coming to light. And so they sit me down, and I remember they took turns asking questions, very direct questions, specific questions, and I answered truthfully. Um, and I give my side of the story because there's always two sides of the story. And I tell them, hey, this happened, this didn't happen. And I was honest about it. I didn't lie about anything, truthful. And at that time, Rich, I'm bawling.
Mm-hmm.
I am bawling. And I literally tell those people in the room, I said, I'm so glad that this is happening because I feel like a burden has just been lifted from my shoulders. I said, my sins have come to light and I couldn't carry it any longer. And even though like that was just the start of everything, I knew right then and there that your sins need to come to light in order to start healing, right? So I'm just bawling, they're like, well, if we're going to have to talk about things, so we'll get back to you. So like a week goes by. Now it's like beginning of April, mid-April. I meet, some individuals at Starbucks, high-ranking people in the conference, and they tell me, we're not going to bring you back to Mile High. And I knew it was coming. Of course, I wish for the best because I wanted to be this good guy, but consequences, decisions have consequences. And this is one of the consequences of me living my double life. And so I lost my job. I wasn't able to finish out the year. I had to let staff know that I wasn't coming back and finishing the year. And what made the toughest part about that was that I just felt like I was letting everybody down. I let myself down. I let my sister down. Man, was that embarrassing. I let my colleagues down, but also those seniors that I had been getting to know. I let them down. And so obviously, you're not giving specifics of what happened. All you can say is really, hey, I'm not coming back. Made some choices, that weren't the best. And you go from there. But in that, the Adventist world talks, man. And there were things that were said that were not true. And so that in this community, everybody has their opinion. So now it's feeling like Union College all over again, man. Everybody's judging me. Everybody's looking at me like, nah, I don't want to get to know this guy because he has this reputation. So I'm living it all over again. And I'm not saying that to feel sorry for myself. I'm just being real. Like that's what I was feeling. I was like, man, this is my worst nightmare. And so now like everything comes to light. Hope knows that I'm not going to be returning. But I haven't been honest with her about all the details as to why I lost my job. I lied about some things. She asked me, I had lied about some things. And so it was fast forward to May 2000. Yeah, it's still 2018, but now we're in May. She's graduating. I'm at graduation with her family and her extended family. And obviously this whole process isn't easy for her either, right? Or her family. But because I wasn't honest about all the details, she's like, oh, it's okay. And it's okay, babe. Like, this is tough. Um, that's not right that you did those things, but I can forgive you. Right. So it's graduation weekend and she gets an anonymous message through Facebook from someone providing her with more details about what really went down. And some of it was true. Some of it wasn't. But in it was details that I did not share with her. So in that time, here she is at one of the biggest moments in her life. And here I am just ruining it. just being that guy, just to crush it, bring the mood down. And here I am, with her family too, who's welcomed me. He's nothing but nice to me. And here I am doing this to her daughter, doing this to their daughter. So that was tough, man. That was tough. And so so from that moment, she's like, all right, this weekend, we'll discuss this after. So then we break up, because it's a lot for her. And she's going to be moving to Ohio to work in the ICU in Kettering. So I was like, oh, great.
I think we had a conversation around this time, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think I only bring this up because I think it's important for the future.
Yeah.
I had a PE position open. At this time I was a principal at a school. And when I heard this news about what had happened with you, the news was pretty much Kemp was with some woman and he's a sex addict and he's going to he has to be in this like program or something like that. And so I'm hearing this stuff, and Morgan wasn't, Morgan's and Hope are really, really tight. And so Morgan, Tyler, and I were talking about this. Little did we know our lives were about to change in like some huge, crazy way. And with this kind of topic being at the forefront of all of this. So I hear about this, and then one of your buddies, one of your, a ride or die friend of yours, it's like, Rich, man, what about Kemper for this position? And I was not excited to talk to you about it because I think because of the basketball team and our interactions, I think even later, like I wanted you to know I was always rooting for you. Like I'm on your side. And I'm like, man, I want to show this kid that I am rooting for him and I am on his side, but this is too soon. Like I can't hire him for a position like this. So I wasn't looking forward to this conversation at all. But we had this conversation, and you were just the man. You were just like, yeah, I get it. I totally understand. And I'm like thinking, man, maybe some stuff is going on with him, that he's growing or something like this. And I hope I'm not messing up the timeline. Maybe it was a year later, actually.
No, it was summer 2018.
Summer 2018.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we had that conversation. I felt really bad, but I think what I was saying was like, man, Kemp, you got like some time has to pass. Blessings to you, man. I hope you find something. But like we had just gotten like the year before I got there was a PE teacher that we had to let go because of a similar thing. And so I was like, yeah, man. But I think that was important because you were on my mind at this point, after this conversation. I don't know if you remember that clearly.
No, I do. And I can elaborate. I just want to add a little bit before that, if that's okay.
Sure, man.
Yeah. So during this time, right, Hope and I are together, and now it's the summer 2000, or it's like May. I forget, It's about to be summertime or just has started. And I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do for work? And man, you talk about like, this is probably one of the best exposures to someone, or my first experience to someone that, because I'm believing that I'm this piece of poo and I'm no good and God can't love me. This person really showed me that, hey, God's love through their actions. And so I'm looking for a job, and Hope's dad, he's done well for himself, super smart guy. He's like, you can come work for me. Talk about like God's love, man. Like seeing this guy, I had just done this stuff to his daughter. I'm this terrible person. I'm lying. I'm living this double life. My sins have been exposed. And yet he has this relationship with God enough to be like, hey, like, come work for me. And so I end up, I'm just blown away. I'm like, how can you just put that behind you? Like, that's your daughter. Like, how can you hire me, someone that's hurt someone so close to you? So I was like, man, that showed me Jesus right then and there. I was like, there's something different about this guy, and he has a relationship with Jesus, and he's caring enough about me to invest and give me another chance to try to be successful. And so I start working for him, and I am working as basically he has a lot of businesses, but this business that I was working for was a concrete business. And so my job was to be the project manager, to follow up on leads and to sell concrete jobs, specifically concrete patios, right? And I was terrible at it, Rich. I was terrible. I think I had driven over the whole Denver area, and I think I only got out of 100 or more leads. I think I got like 2. And in those 2 jobs, the jobs that I was managing, I had to redo them because they got messed up on my watch. So I was not good at concrete. I cannot sell. I didn't inform myself enough about it. I felt like I let him down. But from that, he's like, hey, in the fall time, we have this fireplace business where we go around and I train people to service gas fireplaces. And so this is fall 2018. So he's like, I'm going to send you with my top tech around for, good 3 weeks, whatever it was, 4 weeks. You're going to train it. You're going to also read this manual. You're going to study up on it. You're going to take this test so that you can service these fireplaces. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So long story short, I'm doing that. I'm meeting people. I find like I'm being successful. This is something that I'm good at. And so just from having that opportunity to work and to have someone believe in me, even though I've made that mistake at that point in my life, it showed me a lot, because it's like, man, there are people out there that can love me, even though I've made mistakes. So then that really started to get me thinking, even though I wasn't there yet, I'm thinking of like, man, like, is this possibly how God is? If he can forgive me, like maybe God can forgive me. But I didn't fully believe that yet, right? And while I'm working for him, I'm also staying with my sister for a year, with her and my brother-in-law. And there were days where I would work, I'd come home, I'll just be like this sad little puppy, like, man, I just messed up. Man, what am I going to do? Like, my future in education is shot. Well, maybe next summer, I can get another job in the Adventist system, but at that point in time, people high up in the conference had told me, well, you're never going to teach again in the Adventist system. You're never going to teach again. And there's people out there that are going to make it their mission so that you never do teach. And so I was like, well, man, like, here goes this education that I got. Man, what am I going to do? So I'm working for my father-in-law, making decent money.
Did you actually go to like classes or whatever? Because that was the rumor. I forget. Did you go to?
Thanks for reminding me. So through this whole thing, after I couldn't come back to Mile High and they essentially fired me, they told me that you are an addict, you're a sexual addict, and you need to go to counseling to this program. So while I'm working, I'm not in a relationship with Hope. I'm broken up, nothing to do with her, but I'm working for my father-in-law, staying with my sister, and I'm also attending these counseling sessions specifically for sex addicts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, I'm always going to be a sex addict. That's going to be my identity. That's who I am.
What was there helpful in some ways? Was there some things that you learned?
I will say this. I think counseling is beneficial and you can learn a lot. But the longer I stayed there in a group and we would have some meetings with, similar men that had different struggles when it came to sex. And hearing them say, I'm always going to be a sex addict, I'm always going to be this way, that just hit me the wrong way. I never fully believed that I was always going to be that. Like, I knew I was a piece of poo. I knew like God couldn't love me, but for some reason, I was like, I'm never going to be just labeled like that. Like, I just don't, there's just something off about that. Right. Throughout my counseling sessions and talking to other guys that were going through different things, it's just like, no, that doesn't seem right. Like, and so then that's kind of the start of, and during this time, I also heard like whispers of Jonathan Leonardo and this Love Reality tour at Campion. And I'm like, what is this about? Someone was like, oh, you should go check that out. I'm like, no, I'm good. So that was my first like hearing about Love Reality. And I was like, I don't know anything about it. I know Jonathan Leonardo because he went to school with my oldest sister, Michelle, at Ozark Academy. So I knew of him. I didn't know him, So I was like, oh, I recognize that name. But that was the extent of what I knew about Love Reality and his message and everything.
Okay, we're going to stop the podcast episode right now. Right now, we're going to stop it. And I'm bringing on my guy, Tyler the Bald Eagle Morrison. What's going on with you, my boy?
What's up, Big Rich?
Man, quick question. How long you been rocking? How long you been rolling with the gospel, my man? How long? Guys, I ask this every single mid-roll. Everyone's like, we know what he's going to say. Yeah, how long you been rocking with the gospel?
Man, I would say that the gospel definitely hardcore changed my life in the summer of 2018.
Man, speaking of 2018, January 2019 is when you and I had that conversation in the hotel room. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of that conversation. 5 years, bro. Life's a little different. Man, does that seem like it was like 40 years ago? It seems like honestly, forever ago, dude.
It was long enough ago that we were gathered together watching the Timberwolves lose. So we decided to turn our attention to the gospel, and it does what it does, changed our lives. And now the Timberwolves are winning, and we're still talking about the gospel.
Yeah, as of this recording, number 1 in the West. Let me ask you, what has the gospel done to change your life?
I think the thing that I even shared with you that first year was that the gospel is righteousness is not some destination finish line that I'm working towards as a Christian, but it's actually the starting line for those of us who have been born again in Christ. And that was like just the sweetest relief. It was just the sweetest relief that I ever felt in my life, to know that all of my striving, I was trying to get somewhere and I was never getting anywhere closer. If anything, I felt like I was getting farther. And to know that, oh, I'm the righteousness of God in Christ right now. And so that's just changed everything. Everything is backed by security and joy and peace in Jesus.
So you're saying that the things that have changed are everything?
Yeah, if I was to list them out, it would be everything.
You would say it would be it all? All of it?
Yeah, if somebody asked me like what all has changed, I'd say yes.
Okay, fair enough. Man, you've decided to donate energy, time, money to keep this moving forward. Why is that important to you?
I knew you were going to ask this question. I'm reminded of a buddy of mine in college was our student body president, Carl Duper, and he was the first person I had to say that dollars are like votes, and where you put dollars is like what you vote into existence. And I don't have many dollars, so I have not voted that much for Love Reality. No, the gospel changed my life. So I literally feel like I have there's no question in my mind that I need to do everything I can to get it out there to change other people's lives too.
Man, if you're listening, you know the deal. lovereality.org/give. We want you guys to partner with us. We're feeling strong. Tyler, you feel like if we keep preaching this mug, that we're going to keep having the Death to Life podcast?
I have a feeling that we're never going to run out of stories, Rich.
Man, you had that feel. And then, should we do like a little teaser?
Oh,
So,
sure.
like, if we keep preaching this thing and there's still Death to Life episodes, are we going to have people growing in maturity and maybe jump on what you have coming out in the near future?
Is that what we're doing right now?
I don't know.
Yeah, that life in freedom is something Morgan and I are really passionate about, and so we're going to be doing a little podcast ourselves, Rich.
Oh, boy.
You walked so that we could also walk right behind you. And yeah, we're really excited to just focus on what it looks like to walk in the light as he is in the light. And so we've got some interesting conversations coming up that I think are going to be really edifying for the saints.
Usually the podcasts I listen to are about sports, and now I'm going to listen to yours.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking. All right, everybody, lovereality.org/give. Partner with us moving forward. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate you, Doc.
I appreciate you, and I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Let's get back into the episode. I think the elephant in the room that like Morgan and Tyler and I would talk about when it was like concerning you and Hope was this idea that has been passed down from generation to generation. And that is, once you're a this, you're always a that. Like a leopard can't change his spots. You're always going to be like this. And I don't even know what I believed about it, but I think I probably did believe that. And so many people, I mean, this is right in the middle of the Me Too movement, like smack dab in the middle of the Me Too movement. And so that was the sentiment. Like, if you have done this, like you're always going to be like this. And so, I don't know if you're like, if that was, as you're hearing this in counseling, it's what you say, it wasn't landing right with you.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird because it was during that time, but for some reason there was just that I understood it and I understood why. But I think I just didn't want to label myself like that forever. And I didn't know if that was God planting another seed in my head for what was to come with all the life. I really don't know why I was reluctant to really buy into, oh, I'm always going to be like this. That was the first time in my life where I had a different thought process regarding like my mistakes. But in other areas of my life, I was still like, well, God can't love me. Like, I'm still unlovable type of thing. But then there was these interactions with my father-in-law and my sister still loving me and people still being loving towards me, where I'm thinking like, man, there has to be something different than what I've thought this whole time regarding God. So we can fast forward 2019, summer 2019. It's coming up on a year and I got to move out of my sister's house, right? I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know where I'm going to stay. And before that, Hope and I had started talking a little bit again and trying to repair things. She's working in Ohio at a hospital there. And then she's basically like, hey, if you want this to work again, you gotta move out here. I was like, leaving Colorado, I don't know about that. Like, I love Colorado, but I had no plan.
You got a great job with your dad.
I know. I'm working with Pops. And so I didn't have a job out there. I was sending my resume out to all these schools in Ohio, the Dayton area, and we prayed about it. And she's like, this is, by this day, you're either coming or you're staying. And so we prayed about it. I was like, if I don't have a job, like, I'm not moving. So we prayed the night before. The next day, I get this call from this transitional high school in downtown Dayton. And they're like, hey, we have this PE opening. Teach 9th through 12th PE and health. How does that sound? In my head, I'm like thinking, okay, God, like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, we prayed about this. I guess this is a sign that I'm moving to Ohio. So she comes down and she helps me move out to Ohio. And we move out there. and get my own place. She's staying with a friend. She's working in the ICU and all this stuff because her long-term goal is I need to get into the ICU as quick as possible to get 2 years of experience so then I can go to CRNA school as soon as possible. So she's laser focused in what she wants to do. That's the opposite of me. I'm like, I'm just trying to survive, God. I'm just trying to, you know. And so there was a lot of feelings of like, man, like she's doing these big things in her life, and I'm a mess up, and I'm just making a mess of my life, and I'm 6 years older than her, and here's what I have to show for it. I'm a failure. I'm dealing with that. And so now I'm at this school, which is in downtown. It's a downtown school, right? So you have a certain population of students, right? So it's different than Mile High Academy, right? Which is the biggest blessing I think that I could ever have because it helped me and helped me grow so in so many ways. But also it's transitional. So a lot of the kids there, they're dealing with behavioral or academic struggles. So a lot of the students that we get, they'll have a second grade reading level, but they're in high school. So our job is to help them get to a point by when they graduate, they'll be able to function and contribute to society. So I worked there for that first year there, eye-opening, right? Love the people there, but management and it wasn't really structured, right? Totally different. I love teaching the kids, learned so much throughout that time. Hope and I's relationship was up and down. We were back together, but I was back to living that double life, Rich. And I was being unfaithful to her, right? And I was still doing those things, going to www.youshouldn'tbethere.com, seeking affirmation from the wrong people. But I'm trying to be faithful. I'm trying to do things right. I'm trying to go to church. But then this things, I get another feeling. I'm in this community where here's all these successful people. They're nurses, they're doctors. This is, they're well liked in the community. And here I am, just this little teacher that's working at this school who's getting paid not much to work with these kids. So then I'm going to Sabbath school, and then I'm hearing everybody, because they're mostly nurses and doctors, talk about, oh, my patient this, my patient that. So now I'm developing this new mindset of like, oh, I'm a teacher. Like, this is whack. No one respects teachers. Like, this is like, I'm not worthy. Like, I'm not good enough. Right. So then that starts to add on to the cycle that I'm living in, and biggest lie ever. Right. But that's what I started thinking. And so then that started to creep into our relationship, where then I would have insecurities, and then that would cause tension in the relationship. And then it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good, Rich. But here I am, I really care about her. I really do, but I'm back to living that double life. Fast forward to 2019 of November, right? We're still dating. We're talking about marriage. We're like, oh, we're gonna get married in 2020. So I remember taking a trip to see my parents in Indiana. I brought Hope, and I ended up proposing like in the backyard of my parents' house at the time. And Hope was kind of like, oh, okay, all right. We shouldn't have been getting engaged, getting married, because our relationship wasn't in a point where we should do that, right? I was still living this double life. But I proposed. And throughout that time, fast forward to December or February 2020, right before the pandemic, I go back to visit my parents just by myself during Valentine's weekend, right? Hope stays. And during that time, our relationship was rocky. There was trust issues. And I come back, and she's like, we need to talk. So basically, she breaks up with me. She ends the engagement. And here we are. We had scheduled. We were like, oh, we're going to get married summer 2020. It's going to be good. She breaks up with me. And I'm like, man, this is embarrassing. Oh my goodness. My fiance broke up with me. Here I am. This loser, don't got anything going for me. I'm just a teacher. I'm a failure. Thinking all this stuff. And she's living her best life. She's hanging out with, her friends and all this stuff, right? So I'm like, I go into kind of like this, kind of like soft depression, not depressed where I'm like, oh, it's the end all be all, but I'm like, man, this sucks. There's no hope. And I remember it might have been before we ended our engagement. You called me. It might have been in September 2019 back up. You called me. You're like, hey, Kim. And I'm in Ohio. I'm like, why is Rich calling me? He's like, hey, man, do you know, like, what's your relationship to sin? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm a sinner. Like, I sin. Like, I don't know. What are you talking about?
I found it right here. It's in November.
November, I was close.
I called you and you said, can we catch up soon? And this is this is a month and a half after Morgan gets free. So like I'm on fire and your name is just on my heart because of what happened at Mile High, because of you trying to get, work at Midland. And so your name is on my heart. And so I'm like, I just got to call this dude and unload the gospel. I just got to tell him the whole thing. And do you remember your reaction to hearing this when I was just like, Kemp,
yeah, I remember it. I remember it vividly because I was at Hope and her roommate's apartment and we were chilling, and you call me, and I'm like, why is Rich calling me? Like, I've always liked Rich. I think he's a good dude. I know, but I know a lot of people didn't have that view of you, but I never had anything against you. And so I was like, okay, why is he calling me? And then you just start unloading. And I'm like, all right. Like I wasn't understanding, but you're like, dude, like the gospel's so good. Like, you're free from sin. You're not a sinner. Like all this stuff. And I remember hanging up in that conversation and I was like, Hope, like, I don't know, this sounds kind of whack. Like, I don't know if this is aligned with the Bible. Like, this isn't anything that like I've heard before, but Rich seemed like he was all about it, And I remember,
about it.
like, I don't want to speak for Hope, but from my memory, I remember it being like, yeah, that's kind of different, isn't it? Like, I don't know if we believe that. Like, we need to study that for ourselves. But I was like, if Rich cares about it enough to call me, I need to look into this, right? I never looked into it. But in March of 2020, when the pandemic was coming, this is when y'all started the Wave 1 Love Reality Tour on Zoom. And Tyler Morrison, you're there. Jonathan Leonardo's there. Eddie's there. And I remember going through Wave 1. It's talking about Adam 1, Adam 2. He's drawing these diagrams and I'm just trying to follow along. I don't understand a lot of it, but some of it, I'm like, oh, this seems good. This seems good. Rich seems to be about it. Tyler's about it. He's really passionate about it. So I was like, there has to be something good here. Like I've lived my life like one way for so long. Like, let me try something different, right? And so as I'm going through these sessions, I'm coming back and I'm coming back. But the crazy thing about this is my intention when I first went to these was not to receive the gospel, Rich. It was, I want to show Hope's friends that I'm a changed man. Like, I want to show Morgan and Tyler and Rich that I'm here and I'm spiritual and that I love Jesus. Like, that was my motive. That was my motive. And it was so messed up. It was so messed up. But the more that I attended these meetings and these sessions, I was like, man, there's some goodness to this. And I remember as I was trying to get through this process of not being in that relationship and really just trying to find my own identity of who I was and how God saw me, I remember calling you like 24/7, like, Rich, you were on speed dial. I was like, hey, bro, and I'm feeling this way. And you're like, bro, what does Jesus say about you? What does the Bible say about you? And I was like, Rich, but I'm feeling this way. I feel like I'm such, a sinner and I'm this terrible person. You're like, bro, like, it's all good. Spend some time with Jesus. Call me back. Let me know what he tells you. And I remember doing that over and over. And eventually right? I started to walk this out, and I started to, instead of turning to like basketball, exercise, or calling you or Netflix, I would just pray to God, and I would sit there. And I remember I would have to do this several times within an hour. I remember, like, man, I'm having these feelings. I miss hope. Like, man, or I'm this terrible person. Like, how, and I remember just being like, I just need to pray to God and praise Him for His goodness and His grace, and that I'm not the same person, and that I can be transformed, and that I have a new heart, and that I'm His son. And I remember doing that several times. Like, oh, I'm getting these feelings again. I don't live by feelings anymore. That was a big thing from Love Reality. You don't live by feelings, you live by the truth. And I was like, man, this sucks. You're having to tell yourself something different than you're feeling, because that's all I had lived by is my feelings for so long. And I hadn't lived by truth, that I was having to retrain my brain in the way that I think, to now think, live with the Spirit in me, and to live by what the truth says about me instead of my feelings. So it was quite the process. And I remember you were always there, and you would call me, check up on me, be like, hey, Kim, how you doing? What's hitting? What's not? How you doing today? And I never thought like that would happen. But also, while I was walking this out, like, there were certain days too where I would always be like, oh, I'm going to go back on Zoom. I'm going to show that I'm a different guy. And I started posting on Facebook, like singing these Jesus songs and like these things about how Jesus has changed my life. I'm like, that is so fake. But because I started to walk this out, and because the Spirit now lived in me, I no longer, when the Spirit showed me something, it was no longer from a place of condemnation and shame. It was now out of a place of love. So when I would do something and my motive wasn't pure, right, or led by the Spirit, the Spirit would tell me, hey, is this for selfish gain, or is this, for my glory? And so a lot of the things that I was doing, I was still struggling, and I was still doing things for myself. But now I had this concept about, like, I'm a son, like, I'm loved. I'm not going to be this sex addict my whole life. Like, God says this about me. And I believe that. But then the tough part was walking that out every day, and really believing that in the moments that I did it. So that was over the course of May 2000, March 2020, through that summer. And during that summer, while I'm walking this out, God was using me also, but I was still, like, because I had lived a certain way for so long, there was those old thought patterns and those old ways of medication that would still come back. And so, like, I wasn't perfect. I would make mistakes, but then I would always go back to God, and I would, be like, man, God, I'm a son. I'm forgiven. Forgive me. Thank you for forgiving me, that I'm loved, and that I can be a difference to people that I come in contact with. And so during that time, one of the young adult groups at church, they started to ask me to teach Sabbath school. And this was like later in the summer, after I had several months of trying to walk this out and understand it, right? And so I'm teaching Sabbath school. I'm like ministering. I'm talking about Romans 6 and all this stuff in Sabbath school. I'm passionate about it. I feel like the Spirit is, speaking and using me to mentor. But at the same time, it's, there's still those things that I'm struggling to fully give up. Some of those old habits, So then I kind of feel like I'm not fully living according to this gospel, right? Do you want?
Man, it's kind of interesting. The whole time you were trying to like, if you had a bad motive, you were trying to convince Morgan, Tyler, and myself that you were a good dude. And at the whole same time, we're trying to convince you that you're a good dude.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's just like, guys, please believe, like, I'm a changed guy. And we're like, Kemp, please believe you're a changed guy. Yeah, like, the gospel is the good news of what God has done. and you were trying to convince us that you were changed. But at the same time, like, that's what we were trying to convince you of, that
Right.
you had actually been changed, but not because you did something, but because of what God had actually done through Jesus Christ, right?
Right. Exactly. And so that was kind of the start of this whole being free, right? Being free and trying to walk it out in my life and apply it. But during this whole time, part of my story too is that Hope and I weren't together. We had ended things, and I was walking this out. I was applying it to my life, living this, trying to live this new life. Right? It wasn't perfect, but it was almost in baby steps where, I'm walking this out. I'm not perfect. I'm making some of the same mistakes, but I know the truth and who I am now, right? Which was a big difference, because now, instead of, if I make a mistake, it's, I can go to God in confidence, knowing that He loves me and I know who I am, right? So part of this whole thing, when we had broken up and after I had walking this freedom out, this gospel out, is that I prayed a prayer to God. I said, God, if you want Hope and I to come back together, you want this relationship to be, there's two things that have to happen, right? One, she has to accept this freedom that I'm walking out and I'm believing. And two, she has to initiate or reach out to me. I'm not going to do it. And I don't want to get too much in. I'm sure she has her own story, but it ended up happening in a way where those exact two things happened. And so my prayer was answered, and I knew that moving forward, that this is what God wanted for me. There was no doubt. There was complete peace. I was a new person in Him. The Spirit was living in me. And even though, there were certain things that I'm but old habits that I'm trying to retrain myself to not go to and go to God instead. Like, I know who I was. I knew my identity. I know my identity. I know that I'm a son of God. I know that I'm not a sex addict forever. I know that I can love somebody like God loves me. And that was powerful. So 2020, December 2020, end up getting engaged again, right? And then we end up getting married in April 2021, which during the pandemic was pretty crazy. We ended up getting married in Parker, Colorado, in her parents' backyard. So with about 60 people. So that was kind of cool. That was one thing that God was doing, is that He was restoring my relationship with Hope. He had restored me. He's working on my heart. And now He was repairing this relationship that had been damaged.
Let me ask you this, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you off. Let me ask you this.
You're good.
When we were talking that fall in 2019, you were in the comfort of, like, now that you're telling me the story, a lot of it's starting to make sense to me. You're in the comfort of the apartment with Hope, and you're like, life seems like it's pretty sweet. And you're hearing me say, you're not a sinner, and you're free from sin, and it's not landing. Was there something about not being in that situation anymore that your ears were a little more susceptible to hearing it because life wasn't as comfortable? I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I think, absolutely right. I think anytime that you go through a situation where you feel hopeless or it's really tough and it's been an emotional time for you, I think that's when you're kind of at your rock bottom, per se. And so I think that's when the Spirit, it's just you and God, right? It's just you and God alone. Especially during the pandemic, you don't really have anybody to go to. You got to stay in your apartment. You have to isolate yourself, right? So it's just me in that apartment. I'm not having to give my attention, or I'm not giving my attention to other people. I'm just alone here. I'm hearing these messages, and then the Spirit is just working on my heart. And then I had you calling me, checking in on me. So it was a lot of, I guess, just the Spirit pursuing me, God pursuing me, and and just realizing that I don't have to live the way that I've been living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a powerful thing once like God's love hits you, man. It finally realize that I don't have to try to obtain this thing, this gift, and I can just receive it. Man, that's a powerful thing, and it brings so much peace. Uh, and so in that moment, yeah, just being by myself in that apartment, hearing these messages from Jonathan and co, and the Spirit just working on my heart. And I think it took all those events, each event that happened in the story led up to this point. Because, right, when my sins came to light, boom, that was the first part, right? Then I'm hearing about this love reality tour. Then I hear you call me, hey, Kemp, you're not a sinner. You're a son of God. You're free from sin. All of those things were seeds that were planted in my life. And then the last, I don't know, thing that took was that relationship, the relationship aspect for me to really be like, okay, God, like I definitely want a different way of going about living, and the way that I've been doing it has brought so much death, pain, and sadness. There has to be something different, right?
Mm. So, what was the toughest part about changing the way you had been thinking about God and even thinking about yourself?
The toughest thing was it's because I used to have the legalistic mindset, right? Since you have to try to earn God's love. And so switching from that way of living, of trying to earn something, to just receiving and resting and walking that out, I think that was the hardest thing, because it's like, well, growing up, here's the 10 Commandments. I've gone to Sabbath school. I've always tried to be this good kid that loves people, but I've always felt like I've fallen short. And so now here it is. God's telling me you're good, but here's this gift just to live it out, apply it. This is the truth that I say about you. That was tough. That was tough.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Maybe it was a little easier for you though than some folks, like the ones who had worked really hard and had some success in working hard. I feel like this was easier for me to receive because my marriage sucked. My life was going down the toilet. So it's easier for me to receive it. But so yeah, man, as the summer kept on going on, I think we're getting close to wrapping this up. When do you feel like this was it was true in theory to now you're like, no, this is legit truth?
Yeah, I would say definitely November 2020. I would say is
Yeah.
that when I believed everything and I was still a youngin' to this new truth, but I had fully believed in that, even though God was still and the Spirit was still transforming my mind, and He had given me a new heart. I was still in that process of walking it out in every aspect of my life.
Uh-huh.
But I fully and 100% believe that this new message that God was in the gospel, I fully believed it and I accepted it. It was now just a matter of continuing that relationship with Him, and Him showing me these things in my life and these thought patterns and these actions, uh, that I would, or this way of thinking that I went about. Now He was showing me these things that I was doing in my life out of love, and I was able to reflect and to be like, okay, God, like that's not something I should be doing. Okay, thank you for helping me change that and exposing that.
Man, as I'm thinking about your story and I'm thinking about you, it's kind of like this idea, and I've thought about this several other times recording these podcasts. There's not enough shame in the world to change our behavior. Like, I remember thinking, if I just get busted, looking at something I shouldn't be looking at, I'll be so ashamed that I'll stop looking at it. Or something crazy would happen that would be the catalyst that would propel me forward into just dropping this terrible habit or something. And as I'm hearing your story, and man, it's a wild ride. All the religion, all the legalism, or all the shame wouldn't have been enough for you to see something different. But then hearing something that's actually good news. Because, man, looking back 3 years ago, it may not seem like a miracle to you. Maybe it does. It seems like after hearing this whole story the last couple of days, it really seems like, man, I'm just praising God for your life and for this testimony. But yeah, it had to be really, really good news to kind of flip this thing around for you. Do you resonate with that? Like the news was just never good enough for you to be able to live differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely resonate with that. But I also think that, I agree that the news wasn't what I was seeing at the time when I was going through stuff. It wasn't what I heard from you guys. Right? It wasn't the gospel put in that way. And I had taken all these religion classes at Union, and I never got that from any of those classes. And that's not to be a knock on any of the professors. Maybe that's just where I was in my life, and I wasn't ready for that truth. But the truth is powerful, and how God is using you and the rest of the team to present the gospel it's amazing because it's changed my life. And yeah, I can't think of it. Really is a miracle to think back at how I was living and how my life could have ended up in so many ways to now living this life where I know who I am, how I can love my wife, how I can love my friends and people around me in this way that only I would be able to if I know Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And so the gospel is powerful. It changes lives. And God's love, it's like that song through this whole ordeal, especially when I was in Mile High going through this whole job situation, was that Reckless Love song by Corey Asbury, where he's talking about the 99 sheep, and there's that one sheep that's lost, and the shepherd leaves the 99 to find the one, right?
Yeah.
That was me, man. That was me in so many ways. And God's love was just pursuing, and he never stopped. Even when I thought I was a lost cause, God kept pursuing me. And it's just a miracle. And I'm just so glad that I was able to receive it and I heard it, and now I can to live it out because my life has truly changed because of it.
Let me take you back to good old Union College. There's this kid who desperately wants to be a good guy but doesn't believe it because of all these stupid decisions. And let's say you get out of this moment where you might get kicked out of school. And while it brings relief that you didn't get kicked out of school, it still feels terrible because you had to lie to your folks. You had to lie. And now you're just sitting after all this and you're like, I got away with it, but maybe you didn't, in a sense. If you got to see this kid, you got to put your arm around this kid and you got to speak some truth to him, what will you say to this kid knowing what you know now?
Well, first off, I don't know if the John Doc thing, he was stubborn, so I don't know if he would be receptive to that, to any advice. No, but if I was to see the old John, I would probably just tell him, hey, you're loved, and just try to invest in him because he didn't believe in himself. So just tell him he's loved and that there's a different way to go about things, and just keep it simple. To be like, you don't have to try to do this on your own. God's already done it for you. You just have to rest and receive it, his love. And hopefully that John would be receptive to it.
Man, thanks so much for sharing your story, dog. You're like, in my life, I see you, and hopefully we'll get more of the story later. Who knows when, but just seeing you and hope and how God is leading your life, man, I'm just blessed to see you guys doing it. So thanks so much for sharing your story. You're a blessing to me, bro.
All right. Love you guys. Love you, Rich.
Yeah, man. I love to see and hear this story because, man, walking through this with this guy was, man, there were some ups and there were some downs, but God has been faithful. He has always been faithful. If you're in a situation where you're like, man, I don't know if I can live again without shame, then this prayer is for you. Father, thank you that I am no longer who I used to be. That old me is gone. That new me is here. That I get to stand on that truth because you have done it, not because I've done something in and of myself, but that you have done it. And so I give you my loyalty, and I believe you when you say it. In your name, amen. Okay, Kemp was talking about a wave one that he went to online. Well, I want to tell you guys that on our Love Reality YouTube, we have Wave 1 from 2023. We're about to record Wave 1 2024 coming up this week, but if you can't be at that, we have Wave 1 from 2023 on YouTube. It's a whole playlist. Listen, the podcasts are cool and the 10-minute vlogs are cool, but you got to grab a hold of this thing. You got to see it for what it is. And hearing it from Jonathan in a 40-minute message, it hits different. So that's what I want to invite you to check out Wave 1 2023 on YouTube. Thanks.